say hello to Mr. Z.
Mr. Zoom is rolling. Okay, we're recording, so here we go. I have Jay Parker here. Jay, you've been out there for a long time talking about your experiences with SRA, ritual abuse, the Illuminati. For those who aren't familiar with you, just give us a little introduction into the family you're born into and some of your initiation into this realm.
Well, Sean, I was born in 1956 in a generational Illuminati family. My mother traced her satanic heritage back to the Amalekite people in Palestine, 3000 BC. My father, he was ninth generation Illuminati. He traced his family's Illuminati heritage back to 1720 in the Northern Ireland town of Enniskillen. And the Adam Weishaupt, 1776, was a reorganization of the ancient Illuminati to start their worldwide revolutionary phase. And that's where we got the American Revolution and the French Revolution. So in 1776, with Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati, what was going on was basically we're going into the nation state business. And so it goes.
And tell us, what does that mean? So did your parents talk about this when you were young? They talked about their lineage and what was their belief system?
Well, their belief system was basically the old religion of Molech. And it's a mind control religion. It's a religion based on ceremonial abuse of children in the programmable state from 1 to 7 years old. I mean, my mother talked about electroshock in vitro so that the fetus was traumatized in the womb. And she said it hurt like hell. So all I can say is, according to myself, Stuart Swerlow, Mark Passio, Leo Sagami, we figure there's between 12 and 15% of the world population there's old religion, archontic, possessed adepts. And that means there's over 40 million in America. And we're in trouble. That's all I gotta say.
So it's an ancient religion worshiping Moloch. Essentially, Moloch is one of the deities, but there's also other we've obviously seen different expressions of various gods throughout history, right? Whether it's
absolutely,
Yahweh or Moloch.
But the big one's
Baphomet.
Moloch.
Moloch is the big one. This is an ancient.
Yeah, that's the owl of Bohemian Grove. And basically, I've gone through many rituals. I could elucidate some of them, but I would just say take a look at the book by Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler, How to Create a Undetectable Mind Control Slave. And it's available in PDF form online for free. How to Create a Undetectable Mind Control Slave. Indeed. Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler.
Yeah, in fact, I've interviewed Fritz, and we talked quite a bit about his, extensively about his initiation into this research. And so for you, just to clarify, where did this begin? Like, you basically did you have recovered memories of abuse as a child, or were you conscious and do you remember everything that occurred to you when you were young?
Well, essentially, I spent most of my life until around, I always get this wrong. I would say I was 45 years old, and I accidentally was triggered by a witch. I was known as a monarch here in Philadelphia. I worked as a carpenter predominantly, but I also could tile, do electrical work, plumbing. So I was a good all-around contractor. And so I went from one Illuminati businessman to the next, working for pennies on the dollar. That was my life, because I didn't go cult. My consciousness would not allow me to. My parents put me through the training to go cult, and they gave me the Illuminati history, and I went through all the rituals. But when they murdered my best friend at 7 years old, I went to the Christians down the street in Arden, Delaware, and they went to the police. And then the police said to them, well, we know what's going on in Arden, Delaware, and we can't do anything about it. And so basically, I was left to be electroshocked to where I didn't know my name. And then I went through 4 months of intense slave programming. And I didn't realize my life was a lie and everything was a fantasy until I got triggered in 2001 and got part of my true consciousness back.
And what did you recall when you were triggered, as you say, and you started to have the memories and what was the overall, what were some of the themes of what occurred to you, and why would abuse of one's own child occur? So give us some context.
Well, of course, when you're in a generational family, each generation successively abuses the next generation. And it's all about warping the synaptic pathways, destroying the subconscious mind to be a slave of the dark side. And when I think about my parents now, because Sean, I've forgiven them for stealing my life. I realized that they were not as strong as I was. And when they went through the torture and the rape, they just collapsed under the pressure and went cold. But there's something in me that, as my mother said, they really broke the mold when they made you. And I just wasn't into the family business. So in 2001, I got triggered by a witch who wanted to tweak my slave programming to make me a slave for her. And she opened up the file of my mother's mind control in my subconscious, but she didn't know the architecture after that. And so she basically opened the file and walked away.
Were you able to speak with your parents after that point?
My mother had passed years before that, like 9 years, 10 years before that. My father was still alive, and I've had nothing to do with my family since 2001. I stay away from them because I don't want to be triggered. I don't want to be rebooted in the programming. My father has since passed away in 2018 at 91.
One thing that always, is curious to me is essentially what their so they essentially wanted you to be part of their cult, and essentially you were not fit to do so, in a sense of you did not align with that. So at one level, you never realized what they were doing, because it had basically been put in levels of blocks, right, in your consciousness that block you, right? So you didn't understand.
It's all done in trances and druggings, the torture, the rape. It's amnesic barriers are made by the human mind when you undergo trauma that is too much to bear. And this whole the old religion of Molech, of the archonic paradigm, is based on triggering these amnesic barriers and forming alters and different personas in the subconscious. And then basically people don't even know really who they are. They have their main persona in their conscious mind, but behind door number 2 is something totally different.
And so this is interesting because as a cult phenomenon, it seems like it's an understanding of how consciousness works on this planet, which is to say, we live in an experience of collective conscious and collective unconscious, right? So the idea of a cult, this cult especially, and let's just say its lineage, is about controlling the consciousness, mind controlling the consciousness of collectives as much as possible, not just individuals, but actually collectives, to the place where you can basically mold reality, right? You can put masses in hypnosis. So talk about what the agenda of this cult is in terms of it's been around for thousands of years. What is it really seeking to achieve?
Well, are you familiar with the Younger Dryas cataclysm in 9600 BC?
No, I don't think so.
Asteroids hit the Littorian ice sheet in North America and caused the quote-unquote Noah's flood. You should look into that. But after this Younger Dryas cataclysm with the meteors, boy, that's a story. You'd have to go to Uncharted X and go to grahamhancock.com and unchartedx.com and look at some of the stuff they have on the Younger Dryas. But the water in the oceans rose 30 feet overnight. The asteroid hit, the main one was where Lake Huron is, and there's also a 19-mile crater underneath Greenland called the Hiawatha crater. And basically 90% of the human race lives on the coast. So when you have a cataclysm like the Younger Dryas asteroids, the flooding that occurred, of course, as we know, the oceans have risen 400 feet, 300, 400 feet since the last ice age. So what happened was, almost overnight, all the coastal cities and towns were flooded. And so we lost 90% of the human race. Does that make sense? And so the dark occult,
every religion, every culture talks about the great floods. And I think we know at least around 10,000 BC was the end of the last major ice age, right? And the sinking of Atlantis that presumably took place before then, right? And Egypt was sort of a relic of the Atlantean time period. So
yeah, it was basically a legacy culture. Although I believe that the pyramid Cheops was done previous to the legacy culture. I think goes back at least 36,000 years ago. But I'm trying to make a point is basically the cataclysm happens. Most of the human race is knocked on its feet. And so the dark occult that survived decided, hey, everybody's in a state of shock. Let's make them the mushroom people. We'll keep them in the dark and feed them BS. And so we've been the mushroom people being programmed in the programmable state by a enculturalization, which is solipsistic, which is Satanism light. I care about me and nobody else.
Yeah, Mark Passio.
The true human consciousness is one of we are all in this together. We are family.
Yes.
And the satanic culture is we are divided by race. We are divided by religion. It's always divide and conquer.
Well, it's